everyone, and welcome to another edition of the ATACS podcast. This is Adults Talk About Cool Stuff, episode 55. It is March 31st, 2019, and we have assembled a crew of video game experts to talk about video games today. I am your host, Flex, from Raleigh, North Carolina. Joining me is Nate from Clayton, North Carolina.
Howdy, howdy.
How long have you had your PhD in video gameology?
It's kind of a weird process. It's really long. I'm still working on some parts of it, but I'm basically there, but it'll probably still be another 14 years for some reason.
ABD. He's ABD.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that means. That other voice you heard was Will from Greenville, North Carolina.
Hi. ABD means all but dissertation. So it means that you've taken all your PhD classes, but you haven't done the big shablama.
Gotcha. Have you done the big shablama, Will?
No, I only have a master's degree. I do not have a PhD, and I have no plans to get any unless some sort of Bernie Sanders free college plan comes about.
I don't think that'll be for PhDs, even if
Right.
Well, maybe we aren't video game experts, but we're going to talk about them anyway.
We played a bunch.
Yeah. We have. We do play a lot of video games, especially Will. But we will get to him in a minute. We're first going to talk to Nate for a baby may potentially wake up.
Yep, the baby's crying right now. I don't know if you can hear it or not.
Nope, I can't.
All right.
So
cool.
We're just going to ignore it and pretend it's not happening?
Yeah, there is definitely no baby crying in the background right now.
That's how to parent?
No. Top-notch parenting right there.
Jedi mind trick yourself.
Oh, man. So, Nate,
Yes?
I'm curious how far your baby is in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice.
Let's see. My Steam time probably says that the game has been running for 20-something hours. Probably a third of that is just it on the pause screen while I'm putting a baby to sleep.
Mm-hmm. How far is your baby in Sekiro? What's their save time look like?
Oh, she's already beaten it a few times.
Oh, okay. Of course.
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah.
Would you say that it's more difficult than putting the baby to sleep?
I'm sorry, I cut out for a second there. What did you say, Will?
I said, would you say that Sekiro is more or less difficult than putting the baby to sleep?
This is a different form of difficulty. If I'm being honest, here's the real transition. Neither of those things are as hard as people make them out to be.
Whoa.
All right.
But yeah, one of the big releases the past couple weeks that both Nate and I have been playing is Sekiro from Software, most famous as the Dark Souls people.
That's right.
But you've played a good chunk of it. How have you been liking it?
I like it a good bit. It is very Souls-like, which I'm a big fan of those games in terms of its sort of level design and enemy design and the way you progress through the world and find items and get upgrades and things like that. It's very much in that Souls camp.
Mm-hmm.
And the combat system is very different, though. It's very action-heavy, which I appreciate after enough of those Souls games that are very slow and passive.
Mm-hmm. When you first said it was Souls, my first gut reaction was yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized, that you were just talking about kind of the world design and your progression through that world, and that part is very similar to their other games.
Yes.
But I think there are a lot of things that are very different.
They are, for sure.
First and foremost is the combat.
Yeah, so the combat system is way more action-y. There's way less RPG elements. So, unless you want to be...
like character builds and stats and stuff, that is all very different from Souls.
Yeah, I wouldn't call this game an RPG.
No, absolutely not. This is more in the Ninja Gaiden Like this is closer to, in terms of like its character progression and combat, it's closer to just a pure action game.
Definitely. Much more so just a pure action game.
And also, I mean, action stealth, because there's also a lot of stealth in this game.
Yeah, the stealth component of this game is hugely important.
Yes.
I mean, you can just like ignore it and just fight everything, but you're going to have a way harder time for sure. So I enjoy like generally well done stealth mechanics in games. I generally like, as long as that's not the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's like a pure stealth game, then that's like, oh, if you get seen, you're dead kind of a thing, which is definitely not the case in this game.
No. I mean, I would say that pure stealth style has probably gone out of favor in the past decade plus. But like Sekiro is definitely a stealth action game that kind of, I don't know, almost a roughly equal mix of the two.
Yeah.
At least in what I've played, and you're farther than me, but in what I've played, as you're going through areas, it's stealthily slink your way around, take out as many enemies as you can before you get seen, and then at some point you're going to have to fight straight up.
Well, it depends on the situation.
True, yeah. There are some rooms that like there are enough enemies scattered and looking at each other in a way that like, all right, once you stealth kill one of these, the rest are just going to see. There are plenty of rooms like that, but I have encountered rooms where you can stealth your way through the entire room and not fight anyone head on.
Yeah, but even if you get seen, you can like really cheese ball your way through and like just run away and then come back and stealth kill one more person and then run away.
This is true. Yeah. I feel like the game as a whole is a lot less cheesable than the Souls games.
A little bit.
But that one aspect is very cheesable.
Yeah.
I just this morning, there was a giant man with a bell that he swings around, and there were 3 dogs with him.
Yep.
And I dropped down, killed the dogs, jumped back up, and waited until the big man reset, and then I could stealth kill him.
Yep.
Which, by the way, another difference is I just said the phrase "jump up," and that's, in this game, A, you can jump, and B, you have a grappling hook.
Yeah.
That can get you up to a lot of high places.
Yeah, and you're just generally fast. You don't have stamina. Like you can just move. So that's definitely a big difference, which makes it very easy to just kind of dart in and out of combat and keep enemies from being able to really get after you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's really cool. So, you know, we've talked about sort of that large scale thing. Probably the main difference that we started with was the combat. I really like the sword based combat in this game. The posture system where every attack can be blocked basically by you and by enemies pretty easily. But if you just are blocking attacks, then you're losing posture, or your posture meter is filling up and close to breaking, I guess is the correct way to say it.
Yeah.
And if posture is broken, then you're open to being hit. And in the case of enemies, they're open to a death blow, which is for most enemies of the game an instant kill.
Yeah. It's a really interesting system that at first I wasn't sure if I liked, but the more I play it, and I had a boss fight this morning that kind of drilled this home, I think the posture system is really clever because the combat, so like, you think about the Souls combat, it's really more an endurance test than anything.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, all right, they have their patterns. You're going to circle strafe around, wait for your openings, poke at them while trying to dodge getting hit, and you're just going to do that until those pokes eventually net you a win.
Yeah.
And it's like, can you keep that up longer than they can? Can you avoid getting hit long enough to whittle down their health? But this, you can't really play that way because of the posture system. Like, you kind of can in some fights. Like, enemies do have a health bar.
Yes.
So if you find openings to deal health damage, you can actually kill them that way. But I don't know that I've actually done that very often.
It doesn't actually happen that often, but the main thing about whittling down their health is that also makes their posture fill up faster.
Yep. I was going to mention that as well, which is a really smart system. So like basically as Nate said, you can block any attack, but it wears down your posture. If you so like if I attack an enemy, their posture will, and they block it, their posture will start filling up. Their posture meter. If I take a break from attacking them, their meter will they'll start healing their posture. So basically, if you're playing in the Souls way of like poke at them, wait a little bit, poke at them again, you're not really going to get anywhere.
No, they'll just keep healing that posture damage very quickly.
Yes. So you need to be you need to be constantly engaged in the fight and like constantly participate. Yeah. And you get the biggest posture hits when you parry.
Yes.
So that is a huge part of this game is parrying. Basically timing your block to one of their attacks perfectly. And that'll give you a big hit to their posture, which is very important. But yes, there will sometimes be openings where you can hit and just get straight health damage. And like Nate said, that'll make their posture heal more slowly.
Right.
So it's definitely a very different and interesting dance. And I think that flow of like needing to keep the pressure on to prevent their posture from deteriorating is really, I think that really works for the style of combat this is going for, because it is a very technical style of combat where like timing is very important on your parries and on your attacks and all this stuff. And if you miss your timings, you could get punished.
Right.
But then you also can't hang back because you need to keep the pressure on. So it's a very intense of like, you got to get in there and you got to hit your timing.
Yeah. The only way around that is kind of what you alluded to earlier, which is like find those little openings where you can deal a little bit of health damage, vitality damage, and just like slowly whittle them down that way. But
I feel like that would take a long time.
Yeah, for most enemy or for most like boss encounters or hard enemies, that would take a long time. And the enemies are all pretty fast and relentless.
Yes.
So like that gives you a lot more opportunities to mess up.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was just thinking is not only are your opportunities to hit their vitality directly very limited, and they have larger health bars than they do posture bars. But yeah, it's like you can't take very many hits in this game.
No, you're very squishy.
Yeah, especially compared like people talk about Dark Souls being hard, but you can actually take a lot in those games.
Yeah.
You cannot take a lot in this game. Like you are very frail. So the longer the fight goes on, the more likely you are to hit the ground. But yeah, for a while I wasn't sure if I liked the combat all that much or not, because it is so like I don't know what the right word is for it, but it feels so precise to the point where like the result of combat feels decided very quickly.
It definitely can be.
So like sometimes I'll go into
long slogs in this game sometimes, but for most of the combats they are resolved very fast.
Yeah. Like in a boss I was playing this morning, like I went into the arena, took one hit that took off 3/4 of my health. And I'm like, man, should I just go ahead? And I was like, 5 seconds into the fight. And I'm like, well, do I want to like just call this a failed run and start over already? And but then when I actually get in, like dig my teeth into the fight, like it's great.
It's really fun to just like hit one of those enemies that's really going to push you. And, it might take a few like runs at it to kind of start to figure out what they can do. But then once you kind of get to that like baseline level of where you mostly understand what they can do and you kind of know what you're going to be trying to do, and you're just like working out the timings and like hitting those parries as much as you can and like trying to do the special dodges you need to do for their unblockable attacks. Like it's just a really cool flow once you get to that point. And then, of course, that's all topped off by you finally getting past that threshold and getting that final death blow, which is really satisfying.
Yeah. And it can feel like when you get into those fights, it feels like a dance of sorts.
Yeah.
So I won't be spoilery, but Nate will know who this is. I beat the boss Lady Butterfly this morning, and that boss is that's a very ninja-like fight. Like, both of you are just doing very ninja-like things, and it feels like a dance. You're just kind of like really back and forth, like dodging and exchanging blows and like finding your openings. And that's another fight where, like, if I backed off and gave them space, like, they would heal up really quickly and they would start to get the upper hand. And it's like, I had to be in the thick of it. I had to be engaged in that fight. I had to be on it. I had to be dodging and striking at the right times. And just, you're like, it's intense.
Yeah. It becomes so much about momentum and like being in the zone.
Yes.
For a lot of those fights. And a lot of them do feel very elegant and like finesse based and like a dance, like you were saying. I had one mini boss that I came across last night that fight was not a dance. He was coming at me, and he was swinging so fast and so like. Some enemies in this game will do like, oh, this is a 3-hit combo, and it's like, okay, I can learn the timing for that. This was like a 9-hit combo, and they were fast. He was just on me the whole time, and I'm just like spamming block trying to deflect these. Yep. There was nothing dance-like about that. It was a flailing, bloody mess by the end of that.
Yeah, it's good. And I think they do a good job at mixing up the styles of fights like that as well. Yeah. Because that's something I was worried about early on, is because you don't have the character progression that you do in like a Souls game, that I was a little worried that over the course of the game it might get stale, because I'm assuming this is a long game.
Right.
But so far they've done a good job at mixing up. Like the bosses seem fairly unique thus far in the ways you need to go about them, and they've done good enough with the level design to make the areas with regular enemies seem decent. Though I also am starting to get to a point where the enemies in the zone I'm at, it's like, I can just handle these guys, and these rooms are not that interesting anymore.
Yeah, the first major areas of the game for a while are just dudes with swords.
Right.
Or sometimes spears or torches or bows or things like that, but it's just dudes, and like they're fun to fight for a while, but eventually you get their patterns so down that you're just like, all right, I'm just going to waste all these guys.
And it just doesn't seem to change very much.
Yeah.
But the bosses are very unique, because before the very ninja-like fight, I fought a boss that was a giant animal, let's say, that ran at you and was partially on fire, and that was a very different fight. So they definitely seem to be mixing the bosses up, at least, which is cool.
Yeah, and I think you're about to get to the point in the game where the like sort of baseline regular enemies start to vary more.
Yeah, I had a feeling that those would shift as well, because it's like I've basically been in, let's say, 2 zones the entire game, and I feel like at some point I'm going to move to different zones and start seeing different enemies.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
But yeah, overall, I think it's really cool.
I don't know yet if I like it. I mean, this game is never going to avoid comparisons to
no, not at all
Souls games. But I think it's different enough. Like, it's obviously going to draw those comparisons, but I also think it's different enough that it stands as its own thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like it as more or less or whatever than the Souls games. I'm still fairly early on, I think, and then different enough that I need to still got stuff to figure out there.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I have some small little quibbles with little things in the game that aren't worth spelling out here, because they're just not that big of a deal. But overall, like, there's not that much I can complain about so far in this game.
Yeah. Yeah,
But it is just different.
Yeah, there are a couple of things I quibble about. Well, this is true of the Souls games, is I don't like having to rely on consumable items.
Yeah, consumable items just aren't fun. It's not great.
If you think about Bloodborne, the complaints about grinding out blood vials. There's some comparable stuff to that here.
Yeah, it's not as bad as that, but
no,
similar stuff.
Yeah, similar type of stuff. I don't like that stuff.
No, not at all.
But
the one thing I think I've heard about it, I watched Jim Sterling's video on it. I like to watch his mess. And I think he talked about there being, at least in his mind, fewer kinds of approaches in terms of, I think he felt like maybe whereas you could rely more on dodging and putting up a block before, he felt like this one kind of really leaned into like a parry system.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think he was saying that that might be a divisive thing, depending on who you are, whether or not you could get the hang of the parry or if you were, if that would be kind of a prohibitive thing,
Yeah, I this game definitely has fewer character options. Like we said, it's not an RPG, so you have like a less wide breadth of possible abilities or things you can do.
Right.
So and most things, like you said, are going to be resolved by either stealth or by like the combat that's based around the parry system. So like those two things are kind of your main ways of tackling challenges. So I could see people saying like, "Oh, that's not deep enough for me. I like all the deep like character building stuff from the Souls games." That's not really here.
Yeah. Right. And that to me is the biggest difference between the two, is in the Souls games, they are predominantly RPGs. So you have character builds, you have stats, you have upgrades, you have all sorts of stuff that you can tweak your style of play.
Yeah.
Sekiro's combat is always going to be Sekiro's combat.
And there are upgrades, there are skill trees, there are items you get, but like it's not the same as a Dark Souls build. You are just enhancing the same abilities.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there are the skill trees, but they don't seem like critical necessarily, those skills.
Yeah, and they're not like, they don't really change how you play. It just gives you like, oh, I can do this thing better, or I guess a couple of them give you other like movement options or like a special move you can whip out in combat, but I mean, that doesn't change the fundamentals of how the game plays.
Yeah. And I totally agree that like there's different ways, or there are less options for how to engage than in like the Souls games. But I do think there are some options in terms of like, you're going to get so you also have like these tools.
Yeah.
And then there's also the skills, and it's like, you're probably going to get access to all of that stuff, but which ones you choose to equip and bring into battle could make a subtle but meaningful difference into how you go about that battle.
That's true.
So there are a couple of things, but yeah, this is much more of you. It demands you engage with its specific style of combat.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's kind of no way around that at a certain point.
Cool.
And I think for some people that's going to be positive, and some people that's going to be a negative.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sure we are both going to keep playing this game. So.
Oh yeah. I'll be playing.
We'll talk about it more later. Any other thoughts or questions for now?
No. I mean, I think I pretty much covered everything I would want to say about it.
I'm enjoying it. I think I'm enjoying it more as I go. I think at the start I was a little unsure.
Yeah. I've gone up and down a little bit, but I've just generally been pretty positive on it. The times I've been like least positive on it have been like when I just feel like I have a million ways to go.
Right.
It's like, should be a good thing, but for some reason in this game, like I want to see everything. So when it gives me 8 paths to go down and there's no real like clues or reason why I would choose one over the other, I end up getting like a little paralyzed. So
Yeah.
I'll go down this one 10 feet and see what's there, and then turn back and go check out a different one. And then there's no distinguishing like reason for me to do one over the other. Eventually, you just have to pick one and go down it, which shouldn't be a big deal. But for some reason, that always like grinds me to a halt for like 40 minutes or something.
Yeah. Now, I get what you're saying. Like, and there are other games that have had this too.
Yeah.
But I think that actually helps me. Like, I think if you take your time with that, that can actually help you, because like my method is basically go down one path until I feel like I hit something that's a little bit challenging. Then I'll switch paths, and maybe I'll find something on the other path that'll help me out. And I've definitely already, even though I'm still very early, I've had times where there's something on one path that'll help me on the other path, and it's like I'm glad I was bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think it's a bad system at all. It just sometimes I'll sit down to play, and with, somewhat limited time to play it, if I only have half an hour to play it and I spend that half hour like investigating where I'm going to go next, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I didn't get anywhere. But it's not like I want it to be just like a totally linear game or anything.
Yeah. But you could make it linear. You can just pick a path and go. There's nothing that gates you on any particular path.
That's true.
It's just like you may find stuff on one path that may help on the other. But if you get locked into the combat, like you can just go down one path. There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I guess moving on from that, there's one other action game I've been playing lately, where you're a big, mean, mad gorilla, and you want to get out. Yeah, you want to get out of wherever you are.
So are you saying you're an ape who wants to get out?
Yeah, you're an ape and you want out.
Okay. What is this game called?
It is called Ape Out.
Clever.
Yeah. The whole premise of the game is you're a gorilla, and there's an exit, and you want to get there, and there are people in the way. Most of them have guns, and so you can pick them up and smash them into walls or into each other, or make them shoot each other to try to get past them and get out. It's pretty fun. So okay.
Have you gotten out?
I did get out.
Okay.
My ape got out. There's actually, I'm not sure. I think there are multiple apes. It's unclear.
So it could be called Apes Out.
Apes Out.
Apes Outs.
So there are a couple of things to talk about with this game. The basic premise is top-down, bird's-eye view, very fast action. You move, if you're playing with a controller like I did, you use left trigger to grab people and right trigger to push people, and that's it.
Okay. Left trigger, right trigger.
Left trigger, right trigger. If you send people flying into a wall or into another person, they explode in a bloody mess. If you grab somebody who's about to shoot at you, then they will just shoot off their shot facing away from you. Like you grab them and hold them by the shoulders from behind, like spin them around so they're facing outward, and they'll just shoot in front of them.
Okay.
And so that you can use that to shoot other people.
Okay.
And there's a couple different enemy types, but you're running through randomized levels with randomized enemy positioning and trying to get to exits. And then there's just a certain number of levels of that.
Yeah. Are the levels... Sorry if you already mentioned this. Are the levels randomly generated or randomly assembled in a way? I feel like I heard something.
Yeah, they are randomized. I don't know if it's all like procedural generation versus like pulling from a random pool of maps. I don't know the difference for this game, but it's random.
They say procedural generation like on the store
right
page, but like you said, I'm not even sure. Like
I feel like people use that even if it's not true procedural.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
But it's random. I mean,
Gotcha.
So both sort of the layout of like where the walls and doors are is random, and the just position of all the enemies in the level is random. Visually, it's very striking. So if you haven't seen what it looks like, go just look up its Steam page or just a short video or image of it. It's got a very like simple, solid colors for the ape and the humans, and then the level is like mostly solid on the areas you can walk on, but then like walls are like this kind of weird sketch charcoal color pattern, and there's like a weird perspective on the walls that like for some reason I kept like looking at it as I'm walking around and being like, this looks cool. Like
Yeah.
the way the walls like stretch up towards the camera and like bend the like vanishing point like bends around the gorilla. It just like has this weird fisheye look to it. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it looks cool.
Yeah, I've seen some videos of this game and it looks freaking rad.
Yeah, just visually looks really cool and very distinct.
I'm way into its style.
Yeah. And then from an audio perspective, it's all just like jazz drums that like
Okay.
that like are just kind of like like very slowly, like kind of quietly, like ting 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 in the background, and then once stuff starts popping off, once you start murdering fools, it like builds and like will like do big drum hits when you smash somebody into a wall or things like that, and it's like responsive to the gameplay in a cool way.
Okay, cool.
So it comes across as like an improv jam session of murder.
Of ape murder.
Of ape murder.
That's great.
It's got a really cool effect. So like, yes, it is like an action game. Yes, it is like procedurally generated levels, but like the thing for this game for me is like the way the visuals and the audio come together as you're tearing people in half.
Yeah, that stuff seems really cool.
It's neat.
I mean, and it sounds like it's fun to play too.
It is fun. It is fun to play. Like genuinely fun to play. It requires you to, because it's all randomized, you can't just learn the levels. Like if all the levels were like handcrafted and the same every time, this would be Hotline Miami, but you're a gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
But since it's not that,
yeah,
it's more like you walk down a hallway, you observe the situation, and you immediately have to decide, what am I going to do about these three guys in these three positions? How am I going to handle this? And then you have to jump into action and execute it.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? Like you're not planning anything. You're not like trial and erroring your way through. You just have to learn like the timings of things, because all enemies act the same way. All enemies of a type, like the generic dude with a gun will always, when he sees you, just point at you and wait like 1 second and then shoot. So if you see him at the same time he sees you, you have just enough time to close the distance and grab him.
Right.
And then you can turn that shot on someone else, or slam him into a wall, or throw him into someone else. Like,
so it sounds like the game's pretty fast paced. Like,
it's very, very fast. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this seems cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I like it a lot. It's not super long.
Is it? You mentioned Hotline Miami. Like, is it similar to that in some ways? Like,
yeah, I think so. I think just like the speed of it is similar to that, and the way it like, I guess, really cares about its like audio-visual design is kind of similar. It's also a top-down view, so that's also kind of similar.
Yeah. Do you go down in one hit?
No, you can take a couple of hits, not a lot.
Do you regenerate health, or how does?
So the way the levels are laid out, there are 4 worlds, I guess you would call them. They call them albums, and it's like a record player that you select. I don't know why. But each album is split into like 8 levels, and you regenerate health between those levels, but not Like, you can't just go around a corner and hide to regenerate health. You have to finish the level.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you can take, I think it's three shots from just like any gun you can take. And if you take a hit and start running, your gorilla's like bleeding out on the ground a little bit. And if you take another one, then he's just like leaving a stream of blood behind. And it's all like neon, bright, colorful. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on visually.
Yeah. This game seems cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Did you play it with a controller?
I did play with a controller. I tried it with a mouse and keyboard, and that seemed fine.
Okay.
I just kind of prefer a controller for that type of game.
Yeah. How long do you think it took you?
So there's 4 worlds, 4 albums, and then one like bonus level after that. And I think it took me about 3 hours to do all that. So it's not super long.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then
it's very expensive.
Yeah, I think it's $15 normally. And yeah, about 3 hours to play through everything on the normal difficulty. Then it does have a hard mode where you can play through everything on hard, which I think just adds more enemies to every level.
Okay.
It doesn't seem... I just played the first level on hard, and that's what it seemed like.
Gotcha.
And then there's like an arcade mode where you can play it, and you're like on a timer, but you get points for every kill, and then you get points for how much is left on your timer at the end. So I guess you could like do score competing if you wanted to.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's a neat little thing.
Cool. Yeah, I really want to play this.
Yeah.
You got anything else to talk about?
That's the main stuff that I've been playing. So yeah, what you got?
Well, I think we'll go ahead and move on to Mr. Will to hear about what he's been playing. You.
Oh gosh, guys, shut.
Well, what you been getting into?
Well, I had a special request.
Yeah.
For me to make my section the games as service or the live service section.
You don't have to
shooter section.
The live service.
You don't have to dedicate like this whole cast to that if you have something else you want to talk about. I just want to hear you. I just want to hear you compare the Division 2 and Anthem.
Let's do it. So, I guess when I first got started with the old Anthem, it came out a little bit before the Division 2, and it's sort of like an Iron Man simulator in a way.
That's right. Yeah.
You're like flying around with your suit, and you've got some special like little rockets that you can shoot out, and stuff like that. And it's I was kind of underwhelmed by it because you've got 4 suits you can pick. There's one that's actually pretty neat conceptually. It's sort of like a spellcaster, and it can sort of fly above the battlefield and like drop spells basically, or like drop like shock bombs and fire bombs and stuff like that. Wizard mech, which is kind of cool. Then there's a Colossus guy, and he's sort of like a tanky man, but they seem to maybe adhere more to like I don't know if they want him to be more of like an explosives guy. He's not really much of a melee guy. All the characters except for the Interceptor, which happens to be the one I started as, kind of can only do sort of one melee attack, and then they kind of have a recharge.
Yeah.
And so then you've got the Ranger, which is pretty much the Iron Man. He's got like, he's just sort of all-purpose, pretty good at range, pretty good mid-range, long range. He's got some good options. Like all the time, he's got good options. And then there's the Interceptor, which is like, I think the idea is for the Interceptor to be kind of a rogue.
Yeah. So
to kind of like hop in and do like a bunch of damage, and he can like chain melee attacks together. But he also has like the littlest health that one does. And so I started with that one, And I had been warned, of course. Someone had said like, "Look, this one's kind of trash," and I was like, "Well, I want to try it anyway." So, because I'm not used to like playing, the melee beat 'em up stuff. So, I tried it for a while, and I was just going down all the time and not really enjoying myself. So I hated the game initially because I was like, man, this is not viable. Like, and I didn't think it was necessarily me playing bad. I felt like I was playing with enough, like, I was trying to do the hit and run tactics and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe since then they've kind of patched him, but I ended up switching off to the Ranger, which is the all-purpose guy.
Yeah.
And I feel like, the core of the gameplay is pretty fun with that guy. I've got sort of this one-time use missile that I can use. I've got a grenade, and of course you can have various pieces there. You've got kind of 4 or 5 different abilities in addition to shooting your gun that you can kind of do. So you've got kind of like a melee attack, a special grenade, sort of like a missile that you can use down, a sort of a defensive ability rather.
Mm-hmm.
And mine puts up like a shield that we can all stand in and shoot bullets out, and they can't shoot bullets in, or at least it stops some of the bullets for a minute or something crap like that. So, I kind of find the combat kind of fun. And I think when I first tried to report on this game in the channel, one of the things I said is that like the game tries really hard to make you not like it.
Yeah.
And I guess what I meant by that is, it's a weird thing to play with someone else, because the way you kind of play a mission is, you go and do a mission and then you come back and everybody in town like wants to talk to you, but you don't even have to go to town. And so you go to town and you talk to all these people, and all of them have like lots of conversation, and some of the conversations are like 2 different choices. And I would say it probably takes like 20 minutes at least to like talk to all the people in town who seem to want to talk to you. And it's weird because, they make this game kind of like a live service or like a thing that you're designed to play with other players.
Mm-hmm.
But then between each mission, there's like this 20-minute break, and that at least one person has to do to go and get the missions. And really all of you are supposed to do it.
Right.
And I guess the idea was that I wasn't doing it at first. So like, one of the people in our group was the one who was doing all the conversing. And another thing that's kind of weird is that you can't really, and you guys probably already know this, but you can't hop in and immediately change your stuff. And of course, this has changed now. They've finally patched it to where you can get into what's called the Forge without going through 2 different loading screens. But you have to go to the loading screen, and then you get to see this layout of your guy, and then you can equip any of the stuff you have. And then if you leave the Forge, you have another loading screen to go back to wherever you're going next. But basically, it was like I wasn't getting credit for any of the missions I was doing because I wasn't doing the conversations. And so really, I guess if you were to play this, I guess the way they imagine this going is that all of you would go on a mission, then all of you would spend 30 minutes talking to everybody in town and updating your gear, and then you go on another mission. And it's like there's a lot of dialogue. I mean, BioWare loves to write dialogue. And so like if you just go do a mission and come back, there's going to be like 30 more minutes of shit. Like it's not just like that's just a every once in a while thing. And I guess what I kind of found to be the ideal way to do it, and this is after a lot of people kind of stopped playing. Like it's been a weird thing. It's like we started with a team of 4. One of them just decided that he was done with the game and sold it back.
Nice.
The other one played with me for a while, and then when the Division 2 came out, he just was like, yeah, maybe I'll come back to Anthem someday. And then he just played Division 2. And then the other one is just too hard to get up with, so I don't really mess with him. And from you guys who know me, you can probably guess some of the ones who are these people. But anyway, so that was kind of a really lame thing, because then when I went back into my own game, I found that like I didn't have credit for all these different missions that I had already done, and so I had to do them all again. And are
you doing them by yourself at that point, or with random people that you're matchmaking?
I had one guy who was just like, a glutton for punishment who was just going back through them with me. And I guess he had already gone through them anyway. And so we were doing all those. And the way we were doing it was like, we'd have maybe 2 missions, 2 agent missions, and 2 like main missions or something, or 1 main mission, and we'd get on and we'd play through all the missions that we currently had. And then like basically he would usually have to go, and then I would stick around for another hour and like do all the conversations and get all the new missions. And then the next time we got on to play, I'd have another 3 missions that I'd play, and then we'd stop, and then I'd go do my hour of dialogue. And so that's kind of the way it went.
Yeah.
All right.
That's like, that even sounds like more like, from what, like, you're talking about BioWare writes a lot of dialogue in their games, but this sounds like even more dialogue than a lot of their games I've played. Like,
yeah.
Like when I think about, like,
if you go back to like the KOTOR or Mass Effect games, like there are definitely points in those games where you go back to your ship and like there's a lot of stuff to talk about, especially in KOTOR. I feel like.
But 30 minutes between every mission?
Yeah, that's a lot.
I don't even think those hit that level of dialogue.
Now, and the thing is, now I won't say you don't have to do all those conversations. I'd say only about 10 or 15 minutes of it are things that you have to do, probably to get new missions.
Right.
But the thing is, and I found this out after I started playing it this way, I like the dialogue.
Yeah.
I like talking to these people and learning about their lives. Like, and there are these different decisions you can make. Like, there are these little mini stories that are happening in the town. Like, apparently at one point, like there's this girl who's she's got a little bit of money left, but she's really, really bitter about something. And there's another woman in town who doesn't have any money, but she's got this dream of like creating some sort of like interior garden, some way of like making a garden that you can grow plants indoors or something like that. And you can talk to both of them about their lives and end up turning them on to one another. And then the next time you go into town and talk to them, it seems like they've met up and actually kind of formed a plan to like do this girl's thing. And the animations are good, and the voice acting is good, and the dialogue is good, but it doesn't make any sense in this game. Like, it just does not really fit.
Yeah.
And so those are some. And then now, so here's the one last kicker piece on these stories. So much like the only thing I can really compare it to is like Monster Hunter World. And there's a part where you get in Monster Hunter World when you're asked to like find tracks, like question mark tracks.
Mm-hmm. Those are your favorite, right?
Yeah, it's the worst thing. And so, but in this game, like about halfway through the story, all of a sudden the game is like, all right, to get the next main mission, you need to do these 4 challenges.
Yeah.
And each of the 4 challenges have like 4 mini challenges in them. So it's almost like doing 16 different little challenges. And they're things like, getting like 30 double kills or finding like 5 collectibles or something. And another great thing is that even though you're in this quote unquote open world, and this is a weird thing, only one of you can pick up a collectible. So for a while there, like the guy I was playing with was like, oh man, I know you need collectibles for that little challenge so you can get to the next main mission. I found one over here. And I'd go over there and I was like, where is it? He's like, I picked it up. And I'm like, yeah. But I'm like, shouldn't I see it? He's like, I would think. And I'm like, yeah, me too. But apparently, at least the way it was when I was playing it, when I was doing these challenges, if you picked up the collectible, you were the guy who picked up the collectible. Right. Something. Like no one else got it in the mission. And I was like, I guess they would have to go into another instance or something to actually pick this collectible up.
And just remember that it's under this tree over here in this giant jungle.
So this little challenge section was where one of our team stopped. And that's one thing, is because I think I happened to start with the Interceptor, the little melee guy. I got a lot of weird challenges done with him, even though I was dying all the time. So by the time I got to that quest, I still had a couple of things I needed to do, but most of the confusing things I had already done, even though I didn't know how I did them. So it was like stuff like, getting like quad kills or like multi damages or certain types of combos. That's another aspect of the combat that's kind of underbaked, but also kind of I guess they would probably call it a cool thing. Certain moves, like I don't know if that makes any sense.
I guess you could call it a cool thing, but I don't know.
Yeah. So it's like certain moves have like a primer icon on them, and other moves have like a finisher icon.
Mhm.
And it's like if you hit an enemy with a primer move, and then one of your buddies hits them with a finisher move, then it like deals an extra amount of damage.
Yeah.
And so I guess the idea is that, I don't know, you're all like coordinating this stuff somehow, but in practice, it never really came together all that well. But the idea is neat, I suppose. That's what I'm getting at.
You got to be like a Ubisoft stage demo and like call your shots and like to talk to each other
Yeah.
about what you're doing.
So the weird thing, I guess, is a lot of people where they've been really getting upset about this game, I think, is with the loot. Like, I think that they feel like the loot is like super stingy or not good.
Or completely broken, depending on who you ask.
And I think the weird thing for me is like, I'm not interested really in it as a game as service. Like, I just want to play through all the missions, like see all the content once and then quit. I'm not interested in like sticking around and waiting for DLC or like playing missions over and over again looking for the best stuff. So I actually haven't noticed anything really about the gear. I can't really report on that. I'm just sort of
paying attention to it.
I'm just not really paying any attention to it. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm like, well, this seems better than what I have, and I'll put that on. But
so like, just like give you a green arrow, like thumbs up. Yep, equip this thing. It's better than yours.
It's like higher power levels. I think it's sort of like Destiny. It has like the power level.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, well, this has got more power levels, so I'll put this on. But like in terms of like, let me see if I can find the legendary masterwork blueprint. I'm like, I don't give a crap, I don't care.
So here's the thing about all loot games, especially modern ones, is exactly what you're doing. Just it has a higher power level. I'll use that. Is like what you're supposed to do until you finish the game, and then you're supposed to do like the crazy weird grind stuff.
Yeah. Right. And I'm just not down for that. I'm not here for the crazy grind. So for me, I'm just trying to find, I'm saying like, if I can just coordinate with a couple people to just, just see what happens in this story, because, it's kind of an interesting, I really think the story is kind of an interesting thing, but it's just, go ahead. I'm sorry, Flex.
Oh, it's just like this game as a whole has just seemed weird and baffling to me in terms of like, what are they even trying to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think the main pitch of Anthem, like having played it, like, do you think the thing they're trying to do is make Destiny with a good story? Like, it's coming from BioWare, who is, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the people who work at BioWare now has changed a lot over the years, but like, still BioWare is kind of known for stories. So do you think the pitch they're going for was to make Destiny style game with an actually good story, or
I can see that,
or do you think their pitch is something else, or is their pitch literally just make a Destiny like game and that's it?
Well, no, I mean that might be it. I guess I'm just thinking to myself, like when I'm playing this thing, is like I guess if you were playing this as a single player person, then because the game automatically defaults to matching you with 3 people every time you start a mission, if you don't already have 3 people with you. And so I guess maybe the way they envision this going is, you play a mission and then you'd go and do all the dialogue and stuff, and then you play another mission and it would match you up with 3 different people. But if you actually have a dedicated party, it really doesn't work well. But then at the same time, it's like, you kind of want to have friends that you do this with because they've got high level content at the end, like what they call strongholds, and you're going to want to have coordination and be able to talk to people on like a headset. And so
the clash between like those story segments where you kind of want to be on your own versus the loot shooter part of it where you want to go on quests with friends, like that seems very at odds with itself.
It is. It is. And that's the most confusing thing about it to me, is just that sort of aspect of it. Just sort of like, actually trying to just play through the story with a friend seems like it's paced bizarrely.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's an Anthem for you. And I talked a lot about that. So then about a week later, I guess, Loot Shooter number 2, Live Service number 2, The Division 2. I started playing that, and I really like it. And I think it's also one of these games where, I guess anything AAA, a lot of times it seems like it's just got these different aspects that it kind of adheres to, especially these live services games. And it's almost like you just try and put together the experience that you sort of want to have from it, and just sort of like ignore the aspects of it that kind of seem less fun or don't really seem to jive with what you're trying to do. And so, there's some aspects of it that I think are kind of annoying. Like, you find lots of, all the loot that you find, you can kind of do two things with it. You can either break it down or you can sell it. And if you break it down, it breaks into these weird components, and then you use some weird amalgam of all these components to craft like different attachments and stuff for your weapons.
Right.
Different, and I guess like attachments for your weapons and these different little mods that you can put into your gear to like power it up. So, for instance, I had this little power up nodule that gave me plus 5% LMG damage. And I'm a big LMG fan. So it's one of these things where now if I find like a piece of armor with like an offensive mod slot in it, I can put this little thing in it. And then if I get a new piece of gear, then I take the little thing out and put it in the new piece. And there's just
but you can scrap any items basically into some general resource that can then be crafted into modifications.
Yes and no. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can break down anything into resources, but I kind of wish it was the way that you're describing. I kind of mentioned that. Like, I wish you just got like quote unquote scrap or something like that. Every time you
resources.
Every time you broke down any, got scrap, and you could use scrap to make anything.
Yeah, it's like I don't care what it like magic fairy dust. I don't care what it. Like,
yeah, but in this, it's like there are a lot of specific little pieces, like gun dust or vest dust or barrel dust or whatever.
It's all dust, but
well, I mean they're not dust, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, but yeah, all that stuff. And I will say that like as compared to Anthem, the story in Destiny 2 is just dumb and goofy. Like, I mean, it's who cares? Like, I don't know. I've not at all been anywhere near as interested in it, but.
You're not concerned about the money virus?
No, I think the things that I like about it, one, I think the environments are just fantastic.
Yeah.
They're so great. And like one of my favorite missions so far has actually been like you can like going through the Air and Space Museum and like fighting like it's sort of like this broken down version of the Air and Space Museum, fighting these different like factions of people who are vying for control of DC. There was another one where it was almost like there was a Vietnam memorial and there was like this helicopter that was there to like look like one of the helicopters that was used to drop troops off in Vietnam. And there was a mounted gun that was set up beside it. And then the guys that we were fighting against, I guess, had like put in a functional mounted gun there, and they had to, and it was just like awesome. It was just really good looking environments, and so that to me is the most fun part of Division 2 is just seeing, because a lot of the story missions take place in like museums or like the Lincoln Memorial. There was a side mission that took place over at like the Washington Monument, and it's just cool, like just going and doing stuff there, and it feels pretty good. Like it's got a good rhythm to it. You've got two abilities that you use in addition to the shooting. Right now I'm using a turret as one of them, and I'm using what's called a chem launcher as the other one. And the turret works as advertised. You can just sort of throw it out and it'll pop up and take care of guys. And it doesn't do a ton of damage. It does a little bit, but I like the fact that it draws a red line between where it is and what it's trying to shoot. So it's always like pointing out where the baddies are for me.
Yeah.
Because they love to like flank and get behind cover. And the chem launcher thing is cool because it just sort of puts a cloud of dust that sort of drains enemy health and armor. And so that's especially good for me because I'm a big LMG dude, and the game has this sort of suppression system. So I'll be shooting at a dude and I'm knocking down to like half health, and then he'll just go behind cover and it'll say like suppressed. And then I'll pull out that chem launcher and put it right beside him, and he'll just be sitting in that cloud of nasty, and it'll kind of drain him down. And so it's got like a real good feel. It kind of reminds me of of Gears if it was like a little bit less heavy. Gears has that real heaviness to it.
Yeah.
And Division 2 doesn't have that sort of heaviness, but it is very cover based, pop and go kind of shooter, and it feels good to shoot these weapons. So I'm liking that whole situation. A decent.
Yeah, I was kind of curious, like how much you enjoy. Nate kind of said up front, like kind of compare the two games, but I was also just curious, like the combat between the two games. It sounds like you just enjoy the combat of the Division 2, like shooting and like the build you have and the guns you're using. Like it sounds like you're enjoying that stuff in the Division 2 pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, between the two, I probably like the Division 2's combat more, but I wouldn't say it's like a blowout by any means. Like I think the combat in Anthem is actually pretty fun.
Okay.
It's just, to me, the awkwardness of the entire package is
Right.
what makes the whole thing so weird. Actually getting there and playing with people, is kind of the hard part with that one. If they don't,
but you do enjoy the combat in both.
Yeah, and
Okay.
but yeah, and I'm kind of interested actually. I've become a little bit interested in seeing what the first division was doing. Although I feel like the enemies were I think they were more spongy maybe in the first one.
Yeah, no, I've heard they're spongy in this one too.
It doesn't seem too bad from where I'm sitting. I mean, they're definitely big boys, but there's some different things that you can use. Like that chem launcher is really good against them. There's actually a drone that you can send out that targets enemy weak points, and it shoots a little bit slow. But the way the game works in this one is like all enemies have about the same amount of health, but the amount of armor they have differs like tremendously. And some of these big guys come out who kind of are yellow, kind of have yellow health bars, and basically they have like a crazy amount of armor. And so it's like on a normal enemy, like, you wouldn't really need to use anything that was armor penetrating or that was like especially dealt a lot of damage to armor. But the way it ends up working up with those guys is that if you just shoot them statically, you shoot a regular guy, you just like knock his armor off in like 1 or 2 seconds, and you knock his health off in 1 or 2 seconds. With these guys, it's like it takes like 20 seconds or 30 seconds to knock their armor off, and then their health bar goes down in about 2 seconds. And so it's like if you have something that deals extra damage to armor, then like that's a good time to kind of use it, And so it's almost like there's a little bit more tactics to it, as opposed to one guy coming out that you have to shoot like 1,000 times. There's still a little bit of that, but it's like when that guy comes out, okay, we need to pull out certain abilities right now that are useful to drop the armor really quickly. So I think it's not necessarily the difference between having a guy with like trash health and tons of health. I think it's a little bit more nuanced, and maybe it's not. Maybe I'm being a little bit of a fanboy here or something, but it doesn't seem quite as bad, I guess. Suffice it to say.
That sounds cool, because it sounds like if you're making use of all your abilities, that those people don't necessarily take 10 times as long to kill.
Right.
You just can't use the standard gunfire to do it.
If you just use your standard gunfire, then they'll be really, really spongy, but there are certain things that you can throw out that'll really kind of break down that armor fast.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool.
And so
how's the enemy variety? Like, I think one thing I always think about when I'm sorry.
No, it's just funny because I mean, not great,
Okay, yeah. Well, that's what I was gonna say. Is I feel like often with like games of this nature or games of service or whatever, like it can sometimes be long and like kind of samey. Like you're kind of seeing the same enemies and doing the same type of objectives over and over. Like, how's the Division 2 been on that kind of stuff for you? Or,
well,
I mean, I guess the main question is like, are you enjoying like the pace of play and the general loop and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, there are shotgun guys. There are like Uzi guys. There are guys with what would you say, like grenadier type of dudes. There are sniper guys. There's one guy. He's got like, this is so silly. He's got like a foam gun. And he shoots the foam gun at you, and if you actually just stand there for a little bit too long while you're hit by this thing, it's almost like you get foamed up and you're just like stuck in place, and you have to tap a button to like shake out of this foam, and you can't really use any of your abilities or shoot your guns when you're foamed up.
It's like the foam gun from Prey.
Yeah.
I guess maybe so. I don't know. But that's a pretty weird gun that a guy uses.
Guy
But,
just coming at you with military grade silly string.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not really very scared of these guys. I guess it depends on how you play.
You don't say.
Certain people that I play with are less, we'll say, they're maybe a little more cover averse than me. And so they'll just be out there, and then they'll get silly stringed, and they're like, "Oh, guys, it's okay, you'll be all right," And so that's. But yeah, I'm kind of having a good time with it. It's got some goofy like base buildy parts in it. So you've got these projects. And the projects are kind of like your little challenges. So one project might say like, water purifier, and then it'll give you things that are totally not related to anything. It'll be like, find one tech cache, do 3 activities and donate 50, electronics or something, and you'll do all that. But then the next time you go into that camp, there's like another little part of it. And it's like, yeah, dude, this is the water purifier you built. Check that out. And you're like, okay,
yeah,
neat. And so I guess depending on who you are, that might seem exciting that you can sort of help these people rebuild these settlements or whatever.
Right. Well, I guess generally speaking, like, do you feel like the sort of RPG elements that could be the base building or the loot or like stat points or skills or abilities you're unlocking, like, do you enjoy that part of the game? Like just the progression of it?
Yeah, I think you've got 8, or I think it's either 8 or 10 different skills that you can kind of unlock, and you can have 2 equipped at any one time. And then each of these skills has anywhere between 3 to 5 variants to it. And so there's technically a lot of diversity.
Yeah.
That you could be kind of bringing with you at any one time. Then there are these perks outside of that. And the perks are like, they're a wide variety of things. I mean, they can go from unlocking a certain attachment to giving you extra experience when you do certain things to, one of them is like upping your carrying capacity of your materials. Cause of course you got to have some garbage like that in there, which is really necessary. But so, and the weird thing about those perk things is that like, you can buy all those like less than halfway through the game, like just with the amount of stuff you have. And so I've heard some people say, well, you don't really have to worry about making a choice because you can kind of have everything.
Right.
And so that being kind of annoying for some people. I wasn't particularly excited by any of those perks anyway.
I'll tell you, I'm sure most of like the upgrade stuff in this game is fine. One of my like has become a pet peeve of mine in any RPG or any game is any ability or skill you have to buy or equip that's just like get more experience when you do this. It's like, I don't want that in the game. Like it just bothers me because I'm always going to be that person who's like, well, I have to min-max this and put this on right at the start and then I'll get the most experience throughout the whole game. But that's just like, okay, just don't give me that slot because now I'm never going to use it for anything else.
Yeah, those things are kind of weird. There was actually a I mean, I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I play a lot of solitaire games, and they're usually like the ones I like to play. They usually give you abilities that recharge while you're playing, and to get these abilities, you have to buy them with the currency that you win that you get from completing the levels. And there's usually one ability in there that's like earn more currency. It's kind of like, well, you kind of have to start there,
Right.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense to anything.
Why would you do anything else?
And then another throwaway skill that I'm actually hoping that Borderlands 3 doesn't bring, and that Borderlands 1 and 2 love to do, was kill an enemy and you get this bonus for 5 seconds. And I was like, and I would say there were probably like 10 or 15 skills in Borderlands 1 and 2 that had something like that. It was like, you kill a dude and then you do something for 5 seconds, get more armor for 5 seconds, or pick up more gold for 5 seconds. And it's like, 5 seconds? Are you serious? I don't know. To me, all those skills were like, no, never going to get this. This is terrible. So
I think that's, if you make a very specific build about just killing people all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I could at least see an argument for that being like a gameplay relevant build. Like, okay, I'm going to be in the middle of everything, and I'm going to be trying to get these get these kill hits so that I can keep my armor up while I'm in the middle of everything. Like, I could see the rationale behind that.
Yeah. But then the ones like more experience or more inventory slot for the loot you're picking up, or like those kind of things don't change the way you play. They're just like they're almost like just
a false choice, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either false choice or just convenience factor of getting rid of annoyances that they didn't have to put in the game in the first place.
Right.
Like, especially with the inventory, like carrying crafting components stuff. It's like, if you just didn't put a limit on here in the first place, I wouldn't have to like waste a skill point, like getting rid of this annoying limit.
Yeah.
So let me
and it doesn't change your play style or build or anything.
So let me give you one more funny thing about the. Okay. So when I first played it, you know, the enemies just kind of pop out of these doors and at random spots and come at you. And there's one variant of the guys who kind of have these Uzis, all right? And they usually have like some sort of bandana and like a Kevlar vest on. And they come out of, and there's usually like a couple of them in every encounter. And they'll come out of like the elevator or the door or whatever the enemies are spawning from. And they kind of have this sort of like, they'll like puff their chest out and they'll kind of like strut it forward, and then they'll put the Uzi out straight and turn it sideways like gangster shooting, and they'll just start spraying it at you, and they'll like almost like strut march at you. And I was like, I remember for the first time I played it, I was like, look at this chump. You know, like there's something about the way he's playing, like he's just so confident that you ain't got shit. You know what I mean? And it to me, even now, I find it hysterical watching these guys, and they're usually in every encounter or every other encounter, but I'm like, look at this dude freaking swag out his mind, you know, just coming at me. And
that's good.
But yeah, I don't know a good way of really explaining it, but if you saw it, you would be like, man, look at this fuck, you know, just look.
Guy knows what's up.
Yeah, I mean, he's confident that his Uzi and his Kevlar vest are going to take him to the top, you know? So, anyway, but that's fun. And the game is also really scroungy. And, you know, some of the scroungy stuff is kind of cool.
Wait, hold up. Are there bathrooms?
You know, wait. Not really. I don't know.
This is important.
I don't think there are bathrooms, or at least if there are,
they missed out.
Yeah, I don't know where people pee in the Division 2.
Yeah, how do all these like people who have seized the capital, all these terrorists, where do they go to the bathroom?
I was more concerned about where they store their loot to scrounge.
Well, you know, but you can scrounge from trash cans.
Okay.
You know, and there are some things that you pick up there that I have no idea, like if they're actually like what you use them for. Like usually if you go into a project, they're like, we need electronics or titanium or steel or something like that. But then sometimes you'll search like a trash can and it'll be like +1 kid's sock. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe these are going to go into some super big project at the end that calls for like 50 kids socks.
Wait, do you actually think of an item called kid socks?
Yes.
That's
+1 kid sock.
Okay.
Not a pair of them. You just find
just one sock.
Yeah, just one at a time.
Kid sock.
Yeah, stupid. But I don't know. That's one of the items I have. I have no idea how many I have. I probably have at least 15 of them.
But do you have any adult socks?
No. I have to combine. I have to craft them from the kids.
How many kids socks make an adult sock?
No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know. I do have kid socks. I just don't know what I do with them yet.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, overall, like, you know, I like the story in Anthem. I do like the dialogue in Anthem. I think the gameplay is pretty fun, but in terms of actually trying to play it with someone else, it is pretty tough. And then the Division, it's like, you know, I don't really care for the story. And the dialogue to me is all kind of dumb. But the rest of that stuff, it's very easy to play with people. The gameplay is very engaging. There's a number of skills you can take into the fight, So
Yeah.
So that's those. I guess those are the kind of pros and cons on it. I guess.
Yeah. Are you still in the middle of both games?
Yeah. Anthem. I might be 2/3 of the way through Anthem. I think. The Division. I know that the level max is like 30, and I'm at like 25. But
nice.
I think there's still like 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 like sections of DC that I haven't been in yet. And they probably each have their own sort of submissions and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm probably jammed in the middle of both of them right now. But yeah, man. And that's plenty of words for me.
Looting and shooting.
That's both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Shooting and looting and shooting. Or I don't know what Ryan called these things.
No, we're not going.
Yeah, we're done with that.
Shut it down. Loot and shoot is more than good enough. We are moving on.
All right.
Anything else you got?
I wouldn't say. Really. Those two are fine.
Alrighty. As for me, mostly been Sekiro since that game came out. I guess a little over a week ago.
Yeah, I guess so.
But the other game I've played in the past couple weeks is Baba Is You.
Baba
Is
You.
Door is closed.
Okay.
Key is open. Rock is push.
Yes.
Flag is win.
Flag is win.
Flag is win. Or what if rock was win?
Ooh.
Why don't let's just give it a shot in English.
What about wall is you?
That one's weird.
Yeah.
That's really, I've done that. It's freaky.
I played like
or what
15...
what if Baba is you and win?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
You've won.
I played like 15 minutes of this earlier today, which is why I'm now playing around
about because it sounds like total nonsense.
Yeah, it's total nonsense, but it's really cool.
Yeah, so I guess to back up a minute for people who are not familiar with Baba Is You, to Will's point, maybe I should speak in English, not Baba language, whatever you want to call it.
Sure. Programming language almost.
Yeah. So the game is kind of a weird visual programming. So Baba Is You, the game is called Baba Is You. It is, let's see how well I can describe this.
Yeah.
It's very hard to describe. It is a puzzle game, and it is based around rules.
Doing good so far.
The rules are always, so when you load up a level, there are a bunch of objects around the level. One of them is Baba, who is like a sheep or goat or something.
Pretty sure it's a sheep.
That would make sense because sheeps go ba.
Baba.
So B-A-B-A, Baba. And the rules are always expressed as one thing is something else.
Yeah, so it's like object is descriptor, basically.
Yeah. And the objects and descriptors are visually distinct.
Yeah.
So the descriptors have like a box around them. So the word Baba does not have a box. The word you has a box. So almost every level I've played, one of the starting rules is Baba Is You.
Yeah.
It's the name of the game. And what that means is you in the world, like in this level, you are controlling Baba, which is an object on the screen. So if I press left on the D-pad, the Baba object will move to the left. That's just indicating which object I control. So to Nate's point, you could make a rule, wall is you, and then if you press the D-pad on the left, every wall in the level will move to the left one square.
Yep.
So that can look really weird. So there's all of these objects and rules and stuff lying around. So like the very first level of the game is very basic rules. It's Baba is you, wall is stop, I think is the word, which
Yeah.
means you cannot go through the wall. Flag is win, so there's always a win on the level, and you have to touch whatever object is win to win the level. That's your goal.
But when you say you, if you're something else,
Yeah,
that's still okay.
that's still good.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
if you are wall and wall touches the win,
Yeah.
then that wins.
Then you win.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. By the transitive property.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. You got it. Yeah, whenever you touch win, you win.
Cool.
So the key that makes this work is all of the rules are actually represented as physical objects in the levels.
Right.
So the rules are changeable. So if you push, they're all pushable.
Mhm.
And this is kind of the inherent rule: is all of the text is pushable.
Push.
Yeah, all of the text is push. So if I push Baba is you, if I push the you away from that, then all of a sudden nothing is you and you lose because you don't control anything.
You don't exist.
You don't exist. But usually you're not switching that one, you're switching the other one. So like you could make rock win. So you can rearrange, like flag, it could say flag is win, rock is push. You can rearrange all of those words to make rock is win or flag is push. So that's where the puzzle solving comes in. It's like there's a starting layout for each level, and your goal is to rearrange everything as needed to get it to where you touch the winning object.
Mm-hmm.
And that can get very complicated very, very quickly because this game promotes some real outside of the box creative thinking, and it really gives the impression that there's about 1 million different solutions to any given puzzle.
Yeah. And they start introducing more logic operators like and.
Yes.
I assume other ones later.
Yes. So there's one called, I forget what it's called, but there's one that, it's like robot is, I think it's just move. So I think it's like robot is move.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you move whatever you are, the robot automatically moves.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a different descriptor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So that almost gets into like, all right, I want to program this robot to move on this path.
Mm-hmm.
And the robot itself will push these other objects because rock is still pushed. So the robot can push the rock.
Yeah.
So you can like set up these like systems of things. It can get very elaborate for sure. And the game kind of has worlds to it, and it seems like each world is kind of focusing on a set of mechanics, and then you move on to a new one and you get some new descriptors.
Right.
To play around with. And because when they start building too many of those on top of each other at once, it just gets like mind-boggling, confusing.
Sure, yeah.
Great.
So how much of it have you played? How deep in are you?
I've played a couple hours. I've completed, there's like an intro tutorial world, and then I've done 2 other worlds after that.
Okay.
It looks like, so there's like a world map, and you go into each of these like subworlds, I guess I should call them. I don't know. These zones. And I've done 3 of those zones, including the tutorial. And it looks like based on how much of the world map I've been on, I'm probably like at most 1/4 of the way through all the levels.
Cool.
There's a bunch of optional levels too, that can get really hard. That's the other thing about this game. It is a very challenging puzzle game. Like I've gotten stuck many, many times already.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm like, I don't know how far I don't even know if I'll quote unquote beat this game. It's like whenever I want to do some puzzles, I'll pick it up and play it, but it is, yes, Will just typed in our chat, confused equals you, or confused is you, and that is accurate. This game can get very confusing and mind-boggling, and it's pretty intense. But there's definitely a lot of content there. I don't know if I'll make it through it all because, quite frankly, it's just hard.
Yeah.
But I really like the mechanics and it's totally one of those puzzle games where you can sit there and you load up a new level. You sit there, stare at it for 5-10 minutes and kind of poke at it and try out some things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you feel like you've tried everything, and you're like, I have no idea what to do.
Right.
So then you have to start like really thinking outside of the box and being
it's like, okay, what assumptions am I making here?
Exactly, because the way it kind of banks on your assumptions of what's normal and how language works.
Yeah.
You absolutely, at least me, like I have absolutely made assumptions that are not true.
Yeah.
And like you kind of have to get your mind out of that mindset.
Yeah, which is also absolutely true of learning programming languages.
Yep. Because it's all like, like this, like programming languages, like this is all based on rules. Like it's only what is being told to happen will happen.
Right.
So like, just because there's a wall there doesn't mean you can't walk through it.
Yeah, you got to look and see, is wall stop? If wall's not stop, you can walk through that wall.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, you really like, it's the best puzzle games I feel like make you think.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so I feel like so often in games in general, but also in puzzle games, like you kind of just like, I don't know, you kind of get in a rut, or you kind of go on autopilot and all that stuff. And it's like, nope, like this is a game that's going to make you think and second guess things all along the way. And like, it's cool to see, and it's done well, and it's done in a fun way. Like we were joking at the start of this, it was just like all the weird language stuff you can say. Mm-hmm. And like, it's done in a charming way.
Yeah. It's got a nice, it's like very simple, pixely 2D presentation. Like it's charming.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like trying to make you feel bad for not being able to figure out its hard puzzles.
Yeah. I mean, they are really freaking hard.
Yeah.
I think that's really the only downside of the game is like, if you're not someone who enjoys puzzle games that are going to push you and make you think, like, there's just no getting around that in this game.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be thrown into the weeds, and like, this is, I would say, on the harder, from what I've seen, and again, I'm not like super, super far, but from what I've seen, this seems even on the harder end of puzzle games.
Right.
So like, that's what it is. Not necessarily the most popular genre, but so like you do have to kind of be in for it.
But like, super impressive that somebody made a 2D puzzle game where you push things around that's like completely new and like based on an idea that people have not done before.
True, yeah. Because literally all you do is move.
Yeah, all you do is move and push things around.
Yep. And it feels like absolutely nothing I've ever played before.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Side note, not to derail the whole conversation. But I went to get this game this morning. And I got it on the Switch. I don't know if that's where you're playing it.
That is where I'm playing it, yeah.
I pulled my Switch out of the dock.
Okay.
Which is where it lives. And it's being charged all the time. And the Switch is fully charged.
Okay.
But it immediately was like, hey, your Joy-Cons are out of battery.
Okay.
What?
Are your Joy-Cons on the Switch?
Yeah, they were on the Switch the whole time.
Okay.
I don't understand what happened to my Joy-Cons.
Did you try taking them on and off and putting them back on the Switch?
I did, and then I put it back in the dock, and then I played it like 15 minutes of the game on the TV using a Pro Controller. So I have not checked back. But I was like, are my Joy-Cons dying already? Because
as far as I know, the only way to charge Joy-Cons is to have them on the Switch.
Right.
They feed off of the Switch's charge.
Right. So those things are expensive.
Yeah, they are.
I don't want them to die.
That would be terrible if they've already died.
So anyway, I'll check on that after we're done here.
Yeah, I'll be curious about that. That would suck.
I was curious if you've had any Joy-Con charging issues.
No, but I have not tried using my Joy-Con
Yeah,
lately.
I didn't even take them off the Switch. I just pulled the Switch out of the dock, and it was like, hey, your Joy-Cons are dead.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, that's
I don't
my
know.
tangent.
Now that makes me wonder if I should always leave the Joy-Cons attached when it's in the dock.
Yeah, I don't know.
'Cause that's normally what I do.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
Yeah.
Anyway, Baba is you.
Yeah. Baba is you is good. It's also on PC.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. It's intense, challenging, but it's cool. And I think that's all I'm going to talk about.
Cool.
So that may call it an episode.
Sounds like it.
All right.
See what everyone's got coming up next. What's on your radar, Nate?
Pretty much just Sekiro, and then I'll be trying to get into the Baba.
Baba, you.
Baba.
Okay, guys.
Baba.
What about you, Will?
Well, I'm going to not be playing Baba as you.
Well, there goes my birthday present idea for you.
Whoops. I mean, you would have 5 months to think better of it. Or something like that. Or 4. Yeah, so I'll probably keep playing some of these live services. Probably, I would imagine it's going to be weighted in the direction of the Division, because the people who play that with me are more reliable. And then otherwise, I'm not 100%. I mean, I don't know. We'll just kind of see where my mind goes.
Got.
Mm-hmm.
For me, similar to Nate, gonna keep rolling with Sekiro. I think that's a long one. Keep playing Baba Is You. I want to play Ape Out. Maybe get into the Division 2 someday. I don't know.
I mean, anything could happen.
Anything could happen. It's a crazy world out there. Devil May Cry 5 is one I want to play.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, gonna kind of keep rolling with Sekiro and Baba Is You. And there's a whole lot of Baba in our chat right now.
Baba?
And with that, Baba is over. Baba says goodbye. ATACS is Baba.
Baba.
We are going to sign off for another episode of Baba is ATACS. I have been Flex, joined by Nate and Will. This has gone totally off the rails, so we are going to say goodbye and get the hell out of here before something else happens. We will see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Good Baba.